Hi, everybody. Thank you for coming. We're going to stand for the pledge, please. The flag is behind all of you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
President Daly.
Here.
Trustee Clements.
Here.
Trustee Headland.
Here.
Trustee Valentine.
Here.
And Vice President McNall should be here shortly.
Very good. So nice to see so many faces. Thank you for being here. I'm going to make a motion to go into adjournment so that we can be in recess while we go through the tenure recommendations. So I'd make a motion for recess, please.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. And now I will turn it to Dr. Benante.
Thank you, Ms. Daly. Welcome, everyone. I look forward to meeting everyone in a few minutes. Not only our tenure candidates who I've met many times over, but your families. It's great to see so many of your families here, or so many of your family members here this evening. We're here to recognize our tenure candidates this evening. Tenure signifies an important milestone in your careers. And while some may see it as the end of the activities that are associated with your probationary period, I encourage you to think about it as your formal acceptance as part of our community, a community which upholds a value for our educators and your service to our children. And one of the bases of tenure is to provide you with a safeguard for speaking up for what students need without fear of reprisal. And I'd like to think that fear of reprisal thing doesn't come up here, but it happens in public education. And I really encourage you to do this. Speak up for what our children need. Our community depends on you for that. And tonight signifies the tenure of 4 of our Haldane faculty, but it also signifies the community's gain of 4 career-long advocates for kids. So congratulations once again to you and your families, and I'll ask Ms. Jamin to come to the microphone to begin our introductions.
Good evening. I'm just going to camp out here for a while this evening. We'll start just in the order that I have them. So we're going to start with John Bernstein. I have the pleasure of writing to recommend, or speaking this evening to recommend, John Bernstein for tenure. John began his time at Haldane as a general education fifth grade teacher and made a change to the integrated co-teaching role 4 years ago. In this role, he's supported students in 4th and 5th grade during ELA, math, and special class reading instruction. Mr. Bernstein has a collaborative approach with both his grade level teams participating in planning, professional development, and assessments as appropriate, but he also seeks help from professionals in other specialties such as our reading specialists, OT, speech, and behaviorist as needed. Mr. Bernstein focuses on building positive relationships with students and families and adapting instruction and materials to accommodate his students' needs. He communicates regularly and well with his families. This occurs throughout the year in the form of his IEP reports, email, phone call, meetings, conferences, and any notices that he shares. He shares positive feedback and discusses his concerns and needs for support. It's without hesitation that I recommend Mr. John Bernstein for tenure in the area of special education. I believe his supportive and collaborative approach are beneficial to our students and his fellow colleagues. I think he'll create a positive learning environment for everyone in years to come.
Fantastic. Thank you, Christina. John, if you wouldn't mind, if you can come up. And first, congratulations to John on his recognition this evening. And John, please come shake the hands of our Board of Education members, and we have a small gift here for you.
Might be a different size. Thank you, thank you.
Whichever way you choose, John.
Congratulations.
Can I suggest maybe they come up by you while you're speaking about them?
Cecilia is directing the show, so we may have fooled you that us here up front had anything to do with the way this goes. It's actually Cecilia who does all of the work behind the scenes. Cecilia, where would you like our tenure record?
Yeah, maybe stand
Sure, no problem, Cecilia.
All right.
Yeah, good idea.
Then I'm going to invite Christine Spinelli up next,
To the podium.
where I'm sure she loves to be center stage, knowing her so well. It's my pleasure to recommend Christine Spinelli for tenure. Ms. Spinelli has taught at Haldane in 2nd grade for 3 years and 4th grade for 1 year. She's collaborative with her colleagues and families, a lifelong learner who seeks professional development and works to be a flexible team player each day. Ms. Spinelli began her first year as a leave replacement. In that role, she provided compassionate and consistent support for the students at Haldane, giving them continuity in their instruction and support as they navigated a difficult change. She transitioned to 4th grade and worked with students as they shifted to remote instruction during COVID. The following year, she returned to 2nd grade, where she remained this year. During all of these transitions for herself and for her students, she's maintained her classroom as a reliable, safe place for her children to learn and grow. With her classroom right next to the main office, I see students from her previous school years stop by when they are having a bad day. Ms. Spinelli emphasizes the importance of having a respectful classroom, a growth mindset, setting goals, and working hard. It is without hesitation that I recommend Ms. Spinelli for tenure. I believe she will continue to be a positive member of the Haldane Elementary faculty. And then I'd like to invite Ms. Newman up. There we go.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It is without hesitation that I recommend Elena Newman for tenure. Elena has been a 4th grade teacher at Haldane Elementary for the past 4 years. Ms. Newman has embraced a project-based approach to learning, supporting students with research, problem solving, and collaboration. Ms. Newman's team has included veteran 4th grade teachers, teachers new to the grade, and leave replacements. Ms. Newman has worked collaboratively in each partnership, learning from her peers and sharing her own knowledge and strengths in return. During remote instruction, Ms. Newman was able to utilize many technological applications. She shared what she developed with others, assisting her peers and brainstorming solutions to common problems. Additionally, Ms. Newman has pursued her certification in literacy, expanding her repertoire of skills to support struggling readers. She participated in the Unit 1 design cohort, summer curriculum writing, the report card revision committee, Google Level 1 certification, TC Summer Institute, and many more professional development opportunities. Ms. Newman's students learn that they have the potential for continuous growth. They set their own goals, conduct student-led conferences for their families, and monitor their progress. Students in her class are empowered to extend their thinking and challenge themselves. It is without hesitation that I recommend Ms. Newman for tenure. I believe her students benefit from her leadership in the classroom and will do so in the years to come. And those are the elementary recommendations for tenure, so I will turn it over to Ms. Sniffen.
Good evening, everyone. If Brian O'Gorman could please come up to the podium. You have to stand so the camera can see you. Don't let me block you. You can block me, though. That would be fine. This evening, I have the pleasure of recommending Mr. Brian O'Gorman for tenure. Mr. Brian O'Gorman has worked at Haldane High School since September of 2018. Mr. O'Gorman holds a Master's of Arts in Adolescent Education and students with students with disabilities grades 7 through 12 from Dominican College. In addition, he holds a Bachelor of Science in Political Science and History from the State University at Cortland. Mr. O'Gorman currently teaches co-taught Global History 9, co-taught Global History 10, co-taught United States History, and Resource Room. Mr. O'Gorman has a firm handle on the history curriculum at all levels. His lesson design includes differentiation and scaffolding of content to reach all learners. Mr. O'Gorman is a patient and dedicated teacher who is highly organized and uses multiple avenues to communicate with families related to student progress at the high school level. Mr. O'Gorman has participated in numerous professional development opportunities, including effective IEP writing and goal-setting training. Mr. O'Gorman has coached modified football, assisted with varsity football. He's coached modified and junior varsity lacrosse. He's assisted with varsity lacrosse. In addition, he has served as an advisor for the weight room, designed personal training programs for individual learners within the weight room. Mr. O'Gorman also tutors students, chaperones multiple extracurricular events. When asked, Mr. O'Gorman has been willing to take on additional assignments, being there to help all learners and all students within the high school. Mr. O'Gorman is here to serve. He is a team player, and he has a can-do attitude. I recommend Mr. O'Gorman for tenure at Haldane High School for these reasons.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much.
We'd like to give our board members and our staff the opportunity to meet our tenure candidates and their families. So we have some light refreshments. Thank you, Megan Shields, my assistant, for organizing. So Jen, if we could pause now, we'll have some time for some refreshments and to meet our tenure candidates.
Could I just share one antidote?
Yes, please.
So I just wanted Ms. Newman to know that my son had the pleasure of having her as his fourth grade teacher. And she had this evaluation portfolio at the end of her school year where she had the students list their glows and their grows. And I just wanted her to know that the board actually uses those words now because of your portfolio evaluation, and that those are the words that we use when we do our self-evaluation. We list our glows and we list our grows. So, thank you.
All right, with that, we'll recess. Please enjoy some cake and let's get the party started.
Okay, so welcome back, guys. I would like to make a motion to go back into our public meeting. May I have a second, please?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye? Okay, thank you very much. The next Board of Education meeting will be held on July 5th in the Auditorium Small Gym here at Haldane. And it says 7 o'clock here, but often the reorg meeting happens a little bit before 7, so I don't know.
I believe that's open for discussion now.
That is open for
That's possible.
discussion. So typically, we do something a little bit earlier just to accommodate summer schedule, so you guys can consider that if anybody would like to come earlier, or if it's not possible. Any thoughts? Do you like the 7 o'clock time?
I think we thought, I think we'd come that 7 o'clock was available for everybody.
Does that work
And
for everybody?
You were challenged earlier. Is that right?
No,
Oh, All-Stars.
Wait, which date? This is July 5th.
July
Yeah.
5th.
No, I just have to, we're leaving the next morning.
Oh, that's right, okay.
It's fine. I'll make it work. That works.
Well, then maybe earlier is better.
I'm fine. Because we already set that, we went through, that's just fine, yeah.
Okay, we're
Yes,
good with
7
7? Okay. So we'll keep the 7 o'clock time, and that will be the reorg meeting. And I will turn it to Dr. Benante for his comments.
Just a few updates for tonight. One, welcome and thank you to our board. And again, once again, congratulations to the tenure-eligible candidates and their families who are with us this evening. I wanted to start by thanking Julia. The high school commencement this past weekend was excellent. Beautiful day, like the complete opposite of any commencement experience I've had. It was cool. windy, overcast. It's a beautiful day for a graduation. Thank you, Julia. It was a wonderful celebration of our students, and I know their families were very pleased, and I know you have a lot of people behind the scenes who help with that, who you thanked at the ceremony. I won't even begin to try to attempt to name them here, but thank you to you and your team for facilitating. And our 8th graders, the class of 2026, I believe, had their moving up today. And our 5th graders will have their moving up tomorrow. So again, thanks to our families, faculty, and staff for what's been a demanding but rewarding school year. And really with that, one other thank you. I had the opportunity to attend the art show, and Miss Bronco and Miss Boonshoff put on a fantastic art show in our gymnasium last week, I believe. And I thought it was a wonderful display of student work, and really seeing it K-12 all in one space, you could see the thread, if you will, between the beginning of our kindergarten artists all the way through those who continue to study art, the visual arts at the high school setting, and that was really great, and had the opportunity to connect with many of our families I know who were equally pleased with not just the display, but what their students experience through the visual arts programs here at Haldane. So again, Ms. Bronco and Ms. Boonshoff, thank you for that. Jen, I'll have some other points on the agenda where I'll be speaking, so I'll just hold up there. We did have one item of business, if I could transition to. The elementary school report card, I know, was in the process of being revised when I came into Haldane, which, if memory serves, was the spring of 2018. And I know Ms. Jamin has had the pleasure of trying to facilitate the completion of this review through the pandemic and into this school year. So Christine's going to provide an overview on the process, and you have drafts of the elementary report card in front of you for review as she's going through the process, and this will be an opportunity to ask questions about the revisions that were made to the program. So Christine, we'll start with you, and I'll get out of your way.
So I'm going to start with just the purpose of report cards is to give feedback to our students, or at the elementary level, also their families, on how students are doing relative to certain standards and benchmarks for their grade level. So part of the purpose, which we've discussed before, of revising our report cards is the new standards that have been adopted within New York, where many of those new standards do align with the previous standards and are not huge shifts, but there are some things that were shifts from previous, not necessarily previous practice, but previous emphasis or slight changes in how we approach things. So as Dr. Benante mentioned, this started back in 2018-19, and I actually, so in my Google Drive, I can see old documents that were shared with the elementary account, and there was a next steps, and I was like, I swear that looks like the next steps I had in January, but it was from January of 2018. So things stalled with changes in leadership, and also with some other things like the pandemic. So in 18-19, they had a committee. They convened the committee and were reviewing the purpose of the report cards and what was in them and whether they should be revised. There was a family sent out to surveys to gain their input on the report cards. They collected regional samples to compare our report cards to some of those other report cards and see if there were any glaring differences. And then we started 2019, and the strategic coherence plan had been identified as a goal for the district to complete that process and identify priorities. So we paused the continued revision of the report cards, wanting to make sure that if that process with the strategic coherence plan identified a priority, we didn't want to have moved forward with a report card that didn't align with that. So pausing and making sure that our work stayed with those priorities that were being evaluated. So also in 1920, we then finished the strategic coherence plan in February and closed in March. So that then paused our work further. Last year with the struggle with remote learning and just thinking about what that looked like, and a variety of report cards being necessary to accommodate remote learning during our closures, we did not pick up the revision process. We picked it up this fall. So this fall, we reviewed our current report cards and the work of the committee prior. We looked at the next gen standards and how the priority standards within that aligned with the ones that were identified on the old report card. And each grade level worked through the different curricular areas to either say, yes, the current standards that are identified continue to work for this content area, or to make revisions to them to align them with the standards as they're being adopted. We reviewed the rating scales, so that is where on our old report card, things were rated 1 through 4, and there's a more detailed slide on this. So how a student performs on each standard, being whether it was a 1, a 2, a 3, or a 4, because that was identified as a high priority for our families in that family survey. One thing that was done on the previous report card, or the current report card since this one is not yet adopted, is that academic standards are rated 1 being below grade level, up to 4 being exceeding grade level. But then non-academic standards are rated 1 through 3. So then if a student gets a 3 on a non-academic standard, families often are confused or upset about, wait a minute, in this effort standard, my child is always putting forth great effort. They're always working really hard. Why did they get a 3? Not realizing that a 3 is the highest you can get in that because effort is not academic. It's not clear always on the report card which things are on the 1 through 3 scale and which things are on the 1 through 4 scale, and that being a high priority from our family's side as something they wanted made more clear. And then we also wanted to incorporate the Haldane Essentials. So there are really 4 major shifts in things we really looked at. And this is a little bit of small text, but in the standards alignment, there are places where we shifted the language in the standard or revised it. So as just a couple of examples, the previous report card said answers questions about the text, and the proposed report card says develops and answers questions about key ideas and details in the text. So it gives us more information to the families about what are we asking kids to do. A couple other examples in grade 2, demonstrates an understanding of multiplication, would now read demonstrates an understanding of repeated addition as multiplication, so that we're getting to what the underlying understanding of that idea is. Or effectively applies strategies to solve problems, is now determines the correct operation to solve word problems. So previously in that one, as an example, if they effectively apply multiplication, maybe the problems were reading, multiply within this word problem, whereas now they're being asked to read the word problem and decide, does this problem require multiplication or addition, or does it require multiplication or division? And those are the kinds of questions that would be being asked where a student needs to determine that, not just multiply. So making sure that we're reporting on the priorities within the different grade levels. And then in science and social studies, those standards are a little bit different. There's content-specific standards in each unit about natural disasters or about living things. And so to pick a standard, if we chose those, it would have been a different standard every unit and then would have been quite long. But there are practices that are identified within science and social studies as things that would be being asked every unit. And so we looked at those practices and chose ones that we think really speak to the most important aspects of the science and social studies curriculum, in addition to the content of the unit. So you'll see those also. So in the bigger packet, just so you can look, you have all of the new standards, not in a report card format, but just in a list of standards in reading across the three grade levels, K1, 2 in the first section, and then 3, 4, 5 in the back section. So in science and health, you would see that analyzes and interprets information and data would be a practice that you would see in all of the units of science. Constructs explanations and designs solutions is a science practice that would show up in each unit. And then social studies, gathering and interpreting information or making connections between topics and perspectives. And some of them you'll see slight language shifts between K1-2 and 3-4-5. So like that's an example within social studies. In K1-2, it's worded identifies similarities and differences. And then in 3-4-5, it's making connections between topics and perspectives. So it's the same idea, but at two different levels, like primary level and an intermediate level. The second shift would be incorporating the Haldane Essentials. So again, it's a lot of information, so it's a little bit of a small font. But on the left column there, those are the original learner behaviors that were being reported on. I think they're slightly different between grade levels on the old report card. I think this is a second grade selection just because it's in the middle. And we felt like they were reporting on a lot of classroom behaviors and organizational practices versus the types of things that were emphasized by the Haldane Essentials. So we looked at some of the rubrics that our teachers have been developing through the units of study work, the curriculum mapping work that we've been doing over the course of the year. And we pulled out some of those rubrics that they've created within their classroom at the different levels and pulled that language and then ranked them and sorted them to see what common threads those rubrics had for learner behaviors, so that instead of completes homework, which may be important, but not necessarily, like if that's not happening, you're probably communicating with the family in an email, hey, I'm concerned about John, he's not completing any of his homework, and you're coming up with a plan, not waiting for report cards. Instead, these practices would be things that we thought were more areas of individual growth. So like showing perseverance as it relates to growth mindset, setting goals and reflecting on progress, accepting feedback. And then K5, you see it accepts feedback to improve. So that being a slight shift. The middle column is K1-2. The far right column is 3-4-5. Instead of those completing assignments, you're seeing more of practices and strategies and things that we would be hoping students would grow on that connect to those priorities we have. Collaboration in a small group setting or collaborating effectively with others, approaching challenges, those types of things. So we revised those learner behaviors for that reason and to emphasize those things. And then, like I mentioned before, that confusion with the scales. So the top scale, it was 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3. Families found that confusing. I found that confusing until somebody talked to me about it, and I was like, what is this? Wow, that is confusing. Why do we do that? So that was oh boy, I don't know how to go backwards. Here we go. I found it. All right. So the new one would have letters for our academic standards, beginning, approaching, meeting, and exceeding. So B, A, M, and E. And then the learner behaviors would have 1, 2, and 3, but there would be no confusion about which scale you were using. So there's still 2 scales, but the difference between letters and numbers. And the reason for that was, and we had a long discussion about, could we get to 1 scale? But for academics, you do have students that are exceeding the grade level, that the teacher is differentiating and giving them material that is at that next level, that's really challenging them and putting them above the work that's being taught directly in the class. And so families need to know that, and we want them to know that. But then on learner behaviors, you're not really exceeding a standard. You're either able to organize yourself effectively or you're working on it. There's not a grade level standard for your emotional regulation. You're either able to do it consistently or maybe you're still working on that. Or maybe it's something that's really hard for you. And so not wanting to have a exceeds because it wouldn't be clear what the standard for that would be. So 2 scales still, but more clarity. we added a glows and grows section, also because one of the consistent pieces of parent feedback in that survey was that just getting the report card with only the numbers, you don't get a sense of the teacher knowing your child. You get it from other things, other communications home, your conversations, parent conferences, et cetera, but the report card feels very cold. And also just wanting to have a narrative, a little bit of what's going on from the teacher that removes some of that teacher speak and standard language and is more, what's my kid working on and what are they doing well? So having a section where it can be highlighted at least one thing that each child is really shining at and one thing that they're setting some goals around. And that's classroom language that was mentioned earlier, that it's language we use in our classroom, it's language you're using at your board meeting, and then it would be language that would be getting reported on. And it aligns with our belief in a growth mindset, that everybody has things they are doing well and things that we are working on. We're going to have it in a digital format, which is exciting. Mr. Headland has expressed his desire to still continue to get paper report cards at the elementary level because having that thing in your hand come home is useful, and I don't disagree with that. But if you lose that piece of paper, your child doesn't come home with it. Maybe their organizing materials and self is not very high, and so their backpack is a disaster, and you don't get it. Getting them into Power School and helping our elementary families access Power School and see things in it, preparing them for middle school and high school is one goal. Additionally, looking at report card data right now is nearly impossible. I get 300 pieces of paper. And so if I wanted to see what trend there was on a particular standard or a particular item, I'd have to go through all 300 pieces of paper and tally each thing, which is just not possible. So having them in a digital format will allow us to export the data, disaggregate it, look at it, and see if there are any trends within our building or within classrooms, our grade levels, to set goals for ourselves as a building. We have the NWEA, we have our state testing, but our report cards right now, they're useful at the individual level in that, if Christine is having trouble, I can pull her report card and look at it, but not for class or building trends. So this will give us another data point that, I don't know, I like data and graphs, so that's exciting for me. And those are the reasons that I think we needed to revise our report card. And you have, what you have on top is just what it would look like printed. The standards, I'm not 100, I made a couple of revisions, so some of them might be slightly tweaked, but just a visual of what it would look like. That's the grade 2 standards just pulled out and printed in the format we've requested Power School to make for the paper report card. Which is also nicer. I'll just say from a paper perspective, your old one was on legal paper and had to be a trifold, and it was difficult to put in envelopes. It's 8.5 by 11. There's all sorts of benefits to this process.
Thank you, Christine. I mean, I'll just start and say I'm so excited to get the new elementary school report card. I feel like this is so comprehensive. I think it really reflects how you guys talk about how we're educating our students, in a really great way. We talk about the Haldane Essentials, and you guys talk at your reports. And I feel like this report card really embodies how you seem to approach education. So it just makes so much sense to me.
A lot of work went in. We had grade level representatives from each team, special education, AIS, so it was a large committee with a lot of time, so I have to thank them for all their work.
I do imagine it will take a little bit more time on the teacher's part.
The
Just
narrative
like
section
the narrative.
will have, a little bit, but we're not, the goal wouldn't be to have a full narrative report card, but just to give that little bit of extra information to families. But yes, it will take a little bit more time.
I think it looks great.
I think the shift in the learner behavior is actually, it's so exciting. It really, the idea, I forget, I mentioned it right down, but listens or something, to I can't, I'm not, I meant to write them down, but I'm not remembering the examples. But like, it's so fantastic. It's, to me, I think, I love it. I do really, I mean, I can't believe I find the idea of this shifting up report card so exciting. But that switch from like behaviors and compliance to
Working on using strategies.
Really working on using strategies I think it's very exciting.
And I will say
I'm
two
impressed.
of them are not here right now, but a lot of the language shift came from the summer curriculum work that Ms. Newman, Mr. Bernstein, and Mr. Dudar did last summer on creating rubrics around the Haldane Essentials. So a lot of that language I can't take credit for, but they made a lot of rubrics on what that looks like in the classroom, and they had students working on it in the fall at the 5th grade level to really think about it. And then the K2 groups shifting then that language to, okay, you have a good look of what that looks like at 4th or 5th grade. How do we think about that with a primary student? So it was a good starting block for those conversations.
I mean, I hope I speak for the board. I mean, please express our gratitude for that work. I mean, I think it's super important.
I will let them all know.
And, we talk about as a board, like, how do we communicate the Haldane Essentials to our families, right? Like, where's the PR on that? How do we get people to get it? And this is like exactly a perfect avenue to get people to get it.
Right. You'd rather know if your child is able to use strategies than just they're compliant in the classroom.
Yeah. You're communicating the Haldane Essentials and the Strategic Coherence Plan through a rubric that parents are going to get on a regular basis, and they're going to communicate about it with their teacher using this language, and they're going to communicate about it with their student using this language, which is incredible.
And I also think, and then I will stop talking for now and then come back later, but once it's in Power School too, as you use something, you realize like, oh, we missed this, or oh, we should, it'll be a lot easier to tweak, if we need to contact Power School and say, hey, this one little line here, versus then creating the whole thing from scratch too. So I think that long-term, these revision processes won't be quite so cumbersome as they were for this. Not that the digital part of it is the whole piece, but thinking about what it looked like and trying to create that was a part of it too. So,
go ahead.
Just a quick question.
Yes.
In rolling this out, how are you going to roll this out?
So there is a shift in Power School that is going to be happening K through 12 with a shift to Unified Classroom. We don't use it right now, so I'm lost on program names. But so there's going to be training provided in the fall for all of our teachers on inputting grade books and things like that. The elementary training will actually be less cumbersome in that the grade books don't live within Power School in the same way, because if you have if you're doing a writing assignment, that might speak to 4 or 5 of these standards. So you don't put it in and have it averaged the same way like a high school teacher would for a scaled report card. So ours will be more about how do you input it for the report card, but they're still going to grade in the same way, just with slightly different standards that they're reporting on. So because we're already building that time into superintendent's conference days K-12, there's that time for the elementary to see how to put it into Power School and to have time to play with it. And they tell me it'll be ready for September. As long as it's ready for November, we're in good shape. But they say it's ready for day 1.
And awesome. And how are you going to communicate it to parents?
So class parents and I had a meeting last week. So they got to see this presentation and the samples ahead of time and give feedback and thoughts and ideas on it. Everybody was pretty happy with it for similar reasons to what you're describing. And then we talked about, as a teacher team, having part of the open house in the fall, having some consistent slides that all teachers are sharing about the report card at their grade level, so that they're able to think about that in September when they're coming in and hearing about their classroom and have any questions answered before they get that report card in December.
Yeah, I think that's great. I would just go back to the thing that you were talking about, where it's strategic coherence plan and those key showing up in this. for many people who may dip into and out of this, that might not be self-evident. So
Correct.
taking advantage of those, either the back-to-school nights or even the first distribution of the report cards to kind of remind people that there's a direct link here, even though you may not know where critical thinking's, that's probably the easiest one. You may not know where some of these others sit, but they're there. And that might reinforce what strategic coherence plan and the Haldane Essentials are.
Keeping it at the forefront for everybody.
Yeah. Great.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. I didn't know I was going to be so excited about that presentation. Really. So great. Thank you, Christine. Okay, Ezra and Sean, would you like to join us at the table? Thank you.
What happens when you're on a softball field?
Yes.
President hasn't got his card yet.
Yeah, but I didn't know yet.
Please tell me you weren't locked out of the school.
Well, I'm not, Jen sent me a text, but you know, I haven't,
I said, oh my God.
I haven't gone through the proper initiation to get a card.
Sorry.
Thank you for being here. Sorry. That was confusing. Okay, so it looks like we're going into a special recognition to say goodbye to me.
We're going to start with Luke. if that's
We're going to
okay.
say goodbye to Luke.
So first, I just wanted to express on behalf of all of us to Luke our appreciation for your service as the student representative on the Board of Education this year. We know that it's not easy, especially as a high school senior, to give up Tuesday night once a month, especially when you're balancing such a rigorous academic course load along with a robust extracurricular opportunities. But you did it with grace, and it was really a pleasure to have you as part of this group over the course of the year. And as a small token of our appreciation, we have a gift for you that we'd like to pass on, and we wish you well in the fall at Boston University.
Yes. Thank you, Luke.
I think it's a tradition here. You can find a similar gift, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
There you go. All right, thank you, Luke. And I'll transition to a farewell also to Jen Daly. This is Jen's last meeting with us. I have a few words. So our ability to persevere through one of the most challenging times in public education cannot be attributed to any one individual. But as it is said, it starts at the top. And Jen Daly has been a consistent, steady presence in what had the potential to be quite a tumultuous time for us here at Haldane. And she has held the community's values, its concerns, and its appreciation for our schools at the fore of her leadership. And I was just thinking a little bit more about this. I think one of the unique things about effective leadership is not in necessarily the things we would point to a person saying or doing, but it's work that occurs behind the scenes that prevents issues from ever coming up. And I can say that with respect to my relationship with Jen, which I've enjoyed now for the last 4 years as a board member, 3 years as president, I think about the many conversations that we've had over that period of time that I think directly led to issues not coming up for us and for our community. Jen's board service is not only a model in our community, but serves as a model throughout our region. Jen was active on the Westchester Putnam School Boards Association, again representing Haldane well and with pride that only shone a light on our school district. Jen, on behalf of our school community, thank you for what is believed to be 10 years. Has it been 10 years? 9. 9 years of service on the Haldane Board of Education. That will not be the last time you correct me. You will most certainly be missed, but we know you remain close by. So thank you, Jen, and we have something for you.
Oh, thank you.
Well.
Oh.
Round of Thank you, Jen.
I'll take this moment to say you won't get away with it for the Board of Ed either. So on personal note, I won't speak on behalf of the board. I hope everybody else chimes in. It's been a remarkable pleasure working with you. Your consistent leadership, ability to engage at the right time, ability to keep us moving forward, ability to bring meetings to an end when they need to come to an end rather than talking more, as some of us would like to do. And just your ongoing professionalism, really, has been phenomenal. And we will certainly miss you, and we will certainly call you whenever we need you. And not just your experience over COVID, but for instance, working to bring in a fantastic superintendent. So there's been a lot that you've done that we certainly appreciate your work. And so from
Thank
the
you.
board.
Oh, boy.
We got something.
Oh, yeah, good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Very nice.
Thanks, guys. May I just say a couple of things, then we'll move on. So I was reflecting on how everyone likes to say that school board work is a super thankless job. And I've actually never felt that way. I've actually always felt that it's really impactful. And I feel like as long as you keep the intention pure, the intention to do what's right for kids, to keep the main thing, as Phil likes to say, we don't always get people always agreeing with us, but we do get some thank yous, as long as you keep the intention, the right intention. So I feel like I've been thanked throughout my 9 years. And also, I feel like I've learned a lot, and there's been a lot to be proud of. But I think one of the things I'm proud of, I was thinking about how every single person in here, our staff specifically, with the exception of Julia Sniffen, I've had a role in hiring. And every board member I've been here to welcome you. And that's something I'm proud of, because I think, our team is pretty remarkable, and you guys do remarkable things, and you're going to keep doing remarkable things, and I can't wait to hear all about them and be your biggest fan and support you in any way that I can. So thank you to all of you. Thank you to the community for trusting me with what is arguably the two most important things, right? Your kids and your tax dollars. So I appreciate that trust. I've taken it seriously. And that's it. I look forward to finding something else to do on Tuesday night.
Sitting. Just sitting.
There's always an empty chair here if you want to come back to public comment.
Okay, I'm going to move into communication from the public. I think we're good. All right, information reports. Luke.
I don't know an update. I've kind of been out of school for a while now, but thank you guys though. Definitely something I didn't really expect to be doing this year when I started the year. I was not really expecting to be on the board, but it's a good opportunity that came up, and I'm glad I really took that. It's been cool to see what's going on, having that being in the school and then seeing this too, seeing what's going on here. But yeah, it's been cool. So thank you guys all. Thank you for the gift. Those were really nice. So that's it. Yeah.
Good luck, Luke.
Good luck. Ms. Jammin.
It's been so long since I've spoken to you. I missed you. First, so when I go to make my board report, I always look at June board report, and I see the last June board report, and it was not very useful from the last 2 years at all. So that just made me reflect. So my first June board report was about all of the things we were doing during closing and having had a webinar graduation and a parent information on what a virtual report card was going to look like and all sorts of things, and I'm glad that I'm definitely not reporting on right now. And last year's June report was about how we had finally gotten everybody back onto campus for the first time in the last few weeks, as kids who had been off campus all year were at least visiting and spending part-time on campus, which I am also glad I am not at all reporting on this year. So instead, I have a report full of wonderful events that happened in person with our children doing wonderful things. So we had the first field day that I got to experience at Haldane, 3 of them, K1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We had another successful author visit with Hudson Talbot visiting all of our students and speaking to them about the power of having persevered with dyslexia to become an author and illustrator. The kids were most excited about his book, which I didn't realize he had written because it doesn't come up in the search most often, but We're Back, the dinosaur one, that where like the dinosaurs are in the middle of New York City. They all knew that and were very excited. The art show that Dr. Benante mentioned, state testing for our 4th graders. They had the last science test that will be administered for 4th grade. Next year, the elementary has no science test because the 4th graders will have taken it this year. And then the following year, the 5th graders it'll be the first 5th grade administration. So we get a year off. And we also did computer-based field testing, which when you sign up in the fall for your number of tests and you request them from the state and you try to predict how many kids are going to need tests read or how many Spanish editions you're going to need, and you do your best and update it before the window closes. And there's a little button that says, do you want to do computer-based field testing? And I was like, why not? Let's give it a try. How bad could it be? It doesn't count. It's just for practice. And then they just released a memo that we're going to all be doing computer-based testing at the elementary by 2025, I think. We have a little bit of time, but it was good to problem solve that. So we went through, we hit a couple of little snafus, figured them out, made phone calls, got things worked out so that we know how to do it better the next time, all with no risk to our students. So apparently computer-based testing will be coming sooner than we want, with or without a choice, but our 4th graders got to give it a try. And our elementary student council proposed back, November, December, that they wanted to fundraise for a new buddy bench. The old one had nobody had removed it because we didn't value it. It had become unsafe due to the wood decomposing over time like wood does. So it had been removed sometime in the fall, I think, of last year because it was no longer safe. And we'd had some students who were going to rebuild it, and it just hadn't, as student initiatives go, sometimes they take root and sometimes they don't. So our initiative last year did not, but this year the student council took it, ran with it. It is now fully installed after a presentation to the PTA and leadership, including Dr. Benante and myself, and parents, and it is installed on the playground in full beauty. And then we were able to contract with a literacy consultant, so that was in the budget that just passed, and I'm happy to report that Megan Hargrave met with all of our teachers virtually this past Friday to introduce herself, hear from them what their values are within our reading and writing, and what their goals are to improve so that she can support them, and has already shared a Canvas application full of more resources to support with the things that she heard. So we are off to a good start with that. And as Dr. Benante mentioned, our 5th grade moving up is tomorrow. It looks like indoors, but I'm crossing my fingers that it's a nice day. So we will see.
Thank you.
All right.
Ms. Sniffen.
So, Jen, just first of all, congratulations on behalf of the administration. And while you might not have been here when I was hired, you've definitely been part of the journey of many of us to different places. So thank you for that. Thank you. This time of year brings upon us Regents exams and final exam and testing. And I think that brings on a level of anxiety for many people. But I have to say, we continue at the high school to be impressed with the choice projects that we see in many of the different departments. It's wonderful to be part of different surveys that are going on, whether it's in the stats classes or learning about different business models and business math, or diving a little deeper into different history projects. So I just want to thank the staff for, really diving in this time of year into some choice projects for students, and I did list a few of those for you there. The junior and senior prom took place on June 10th over at West Point, and I've been to a lot of proms. This one was way up there. The kids were amazing. Everybody had a good time. I want to thank Mr. O'Gorman, Mr. Vergidamo, Ms. Granisi, Ms. Paparo, Mr. Doherty, Mr. Rosa, Mr. Cowan, and Deputy Tolvey, and the Sheriff's Department for all of their assistance, both at Boscobel and at West Point. Our Insight magazine, which is our literary magazine, has been published. It is chock full of not only amazing writing and poetry from our students, but also artwork. So I'd like to thank Ms. Boonshoff, Ms. Pierce, and Ms. Martinez for their work. If anybody on the board is interested in copies, I will be sure to get them over to Catherine if you could just let her know. The yearbook is out. Ms. Paparo and Ms. Granisi, again, thank you for the yearbook. If you're interested in a copy of the yearbook, just let Catherine know. We'll get those to you as well. This year, I think I've mentioned that we have a lot of incoming new freshmen that haven't been on Haldane campus from kindergarten to 8th grade. And 2 weeks ago, I had 16 rising juniors interested in leading and facilitating different group work on freshman orientation, throwing out ideas about icebreakers and how do we engage them in our culture and who we are. It was a magnificent lunch. I did have to buy pizza, but I got 16 and they're all telling me they're going to be there on August 30th. So we'll be meeting one other time this summer to really plan out an effective orientation for the students coming onto the campus. And finally, we thank you, Josh. Having a director of human resource and curriculum is phenomenal all year long. But this time of year, out of the high school, and a lot of these are also shared with middle school, we're hiring a guidance leave replacement. We're hiring 2 social studies teachers, an athletic director, home and careers, and chorus, which was .8, is now full-time. So there's a lot of hiring and screening and interviewing and demo lessons and all of that going on right now as well. So keep an eye out for different, hopefully, recommendations to you over the next couple weeks. And I just want to thank Josh for his partnership and help in that process. So that's it.
Thank you. Ms. Kashian, welcome to your first board report.
Thank you. Thank you, President Daly and trustees and Dr. Benante for this opportunity to present my first board report. So I'm delighted to be here, and even though I have only been on campus for about 2.5 weeks, I did start my entry plan in the weeks leading up to actually being here on campus. And so part of that involved meeting with a lot of people and kind of engaging in a listening and learning campaign. And I'm still actively engaged in that. So I've had the opportunity to do a lot of different things and meet with different people and important stakeholders, but the most important stakeholders being the children. So I'm really relishing the opportunity to be on campus and actually get into classrooms and see programs in action and meet teachers and really get a feeling for the pulse of the place. And I have to say that the graduation, it was tremendous, really kind of moving, and just watching the students come down the hill. But it really was such a special event. And so I can see that this community is small but mighty, and people are so dedicated. So I'm very happy to be a part of that. I've got a lot of different things that I'm going to be working on, and I'm also happy to be collaborating with colleagues on some important initiatives, some of which I'll be working with all of you on. So we are looking forward to conducting an audit of our special education services. I'm looking very much forward to working with our team leaders and with our curriculum directors and our literacy specialists on how we can continue to develop the project that's already been started, which is to have a really robust multi-tiered system of support. I very much see that as going hand in hand with a strong special services department. So a lot of good things and a lot of good projects ahead. There's some really good things happening already, and so I'm really looking forward to building on that in the future.
Thank you.
Okay,
Welcome.
thanks.
Mr. Elder.
Good evening, everybody. So as the year comes to close, I wanted to provide an update on a couple of curriculum areas that we've been working on all year. The first is the K-5 math adoption process. And so during the first 2 weeks of May, math teachers were able to pilot a couple of programs within their classrooms. And after that, the K-5 Math Committee met to debrief these collective experiences, sharing observations not only from their own practices, but also observations from students as well. And upon discussion, it was concluded that teachers would benefit from continuing this analysis into the fall of 2022. And this decision was based on a couple points of reflection. The first was, through our conversations, it was that teachers wanted a larger sample size of using these programs within their classrooms. I think one of the aspects that was that took place was we were basing some of these analysis and observations based upon a kind of short window of time of utilizing these within classrooms, only 3 or 4 different lessons. And it was a really an astute observation by the committee to think that we need a larger sample size of looking at this to really benefit about the coherence and the structure of how these programs are developed and implemented, to be able to see patterns and trends over a period of time of having them implemented. The second piece of it is we just realized that ample professional development between now and September was not going to be able to take place for our teachers to actually implement these programs. And so kind of taking advantage of that pause a little bit. So what we're going to do is to continue looking at this into the fall, which will allow our teachers to have a little bit larger sample size of looking at these programs, to hopefully have a recommendation by kind of end of fall, mid-year, which allows the second half of the school year to kind of really gear up in professional development to make sure our teachers are really well prepared for implementation. When our teachers are well prepared, this benefits students. So we look forward to kind of continuing this into the fall. They've done tremendous work. It's been very thoughtful, articulate work, and we're going to continue that into the fall with, again, an idea of hopefully a timeline of mid-year recommendation and then professional development in the spring. Second, it's not on this report, but wanted to provide an update, was our curriculum overview documents. That's been something we've been working on for the entire school year, K-12. The process where we're at there is we have created kind of a shared drive within our Google folder where teachers are uploading these documents that they've been working on creating all year, and we've mapped that out as a repository that all teachers K-12 have access to, so there's a little bit of transparency of communication. And we have these folders for each subject level, each grade level that teachers are uploading. What that will allow us to do over the summer is to kind of pause, sit back, do a little data reflection, myself and the building principals, of looking at some of the work that's been completed, and it will allow us to kind of see the status of that work, both benefits and areas that we need to continue to work on, and it allows us to kind of regroup and rechart that kind of pathway for what that looks like for the next school year. But that's ongoing work, but I can tell you from just initially looking at them, some of the work is tremendous. It's been really great to see how what is being articulated in classrooms looks like on paper in some ways.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yep.
I am so heartened by the response of teachers about wanting to be more thoughtful, not thoughtful, but to take more time in deciding on the math curriculum. It's such a critically important decision to make. It has such huge implications. And not that this is necessarily surprising, but it means that folks just approach the work with such intellectual rigor, and persistence. And it's actually asking a lot of them, right? It's a lot harder to continue to teach with I can't remember how many y'all have under consideration, but with multiple curriculum resources than to just say let's go with this one. I mean, I think I'm sure it must be kind of frustrating or disappointing that we don't have it and we don't have the decision yet, and it's one more year of sort of figuring things out, but the process to me sounds really very impressive.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great.
Mr. Cowan.
Good evening, members of the board and Dr. Benante. I'd like to provide a couple of updates from our athletic program. On Monday, June 13th, the Haldane Athletic Department, in collaboration with the Blue Devil Booster Club, hosted our second annual Athletic Awards Night. This year, our students' parents, guardians, family, and friends were able to attend. The event occurred in our Bell parking lot, and guests had access to food trucks, sandwiches, pizza, snacks, ice cream, and beverages. We recognized our JV and varsity athletes. for their participation on our sports teams and honored our individual athletes who earned all league, all conference, and all section and all state awards. It was an enjoyable evening for our student athletes, families, and friends. And I just want to extend a sincere thank you to our Blue Devil Booster Club and all of the parents and staff who helped make that night a possibility. Now I'd like to just close out the year with a Scholar Athlete Program update. This is something that I've discussed at previous board meetings at the end of fall and winter. And so after each school year, schools must apply for the School of Excellence Award or the School of Distinction Award. The School of Excellence Award goes to districts where a minimum of 75% of the school's varsity athletic teams earn Scholar Athlete Team recognition. Haldane has been recognized as a School of Excellence each year since 2018. To be eligible for the School of Distinction Award, 100% of the athletics teams at a particular school district need to earn Scholar Athlete Team recognition. I'm proud to share that for the 2021-22 school year, 100% of the athletic teams at Haldane earned Scholar Athlete Team recognition. As a result, Haldane will receive a School of Distinction Award for the first time since the program began in the 2005 school year. In addition, Haldane will be announced at the annual New York State Public High School Athletic Association Central Committee meeting and published on the NYSFA website. Haldane being named a School of Distinction is a testament to the quality of instruction and support from our teachers, coaches, and building and district leadership. So to our athletes and to Haldane as a school district, I just want to say well done. It's quite an accomplishment.
Very nice. Thank you.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Dan, it's on now. Dan, I know we've discussed the School of Distinction Award back in the fall, and the honor that it really is to have that. Could you perhaps qualify it a bit more? How many students, because I follow up on these things, I know how rare it is, but could you give a little more context to how many schools typically are recognized as being a School of Distinction?
Sure. Typically, there's about 3 or 4 school districts a year who earn the School of Distinction Award. Rye is a school district that typically earns the School of Distinction Award. Ursuline, Scarsdale, but yeah, usually it's about 3 or 4 schools in all of Section 1 that earn that award.
How many schools are in Section 1 again?
There is, I believe, about 90 schools in Section 1. Yeah,
Thanks,
so
Dan.
it's quite an
Appreciate
accomplishment
that.
for Haldane.
Great work. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Walsh.
Good evening. As the end of the school year is right around the corner, the facilities department is looking forward to not only the challenges but the change of pace that the summer brings us. We spent the past few weeks developing our summer plans, organizing work parties, ensuring materials are on site, checking equipment, and scheduling of contractors. The bulk of our summer work does revolve around the full cleaning of all classrooms, the furniture, and the cleaning and waxing of floors. We also have other in-house work as well as contracted work scheduled to take place, including the painting of the elementary school main building, the installation of window screens in the main building, stormwater work along the flagpole and main entrance, as well as our capital construction work, which is the electrical mechanical phase of the 2019 capital referendum. In regards to the master plan, CS Architecture continues to be on site. A full meeting of the Campus Master Plan Steering Committee took place on June 1st. They provided an overview of the process and a status report of completed work to date. They also conducted during that same June 1st meeting an additional focus group meeting with recent Haldane graduates. CS Architecture was provided architectural mechanical plans of the district as part of their information gathering, and they plan on conducting a full facilities assessment during the week of July 25th. And that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Busy time. Okay, consent agenda minutes. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second?
These are our minutes from the June 7th business meeting. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, committee minutes are here. The Tech Committee, the District-Wide Safety Committee, and the Buildings and Grounds Committee reports for review. Going into consent agenda financial, may I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, consent agenda personnel. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Congratulations again to our tenure recommendations. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Board committee reports, our policy committee update. I'll turn it over to Peggy.
Yeah, so we got back our audit from Erie BOCES, and so since we'd been doing a lot of work over the course of the year, a lot of the policies that needed to be updated, we'd already updated. But the audit does come with some recommendations and additional information from Erie BOCES for us to go through. So historically, in all 3 years we've had the policy committee, we've had 2 board members, me and Jen, working with Phil and the support of Megan Shields. And so we need to decide, is that a structure we want to continue to have? It does make sense. I mean, policy work is the most, I mean, it ranks up there as like our primary responsibilities. So there's work for us to do right now. I mean, we have this audit, there's things, the policies for us to go through and review, as well as to continue our ongoing review of the policies. So I don't think we have to decide now, unless there's somebody who's just so excited to be on the policies committee, as well. You should be, you know, it's, you know, I mean, there's really, like, why not?
We have a good time at the policy committee. It's very interesting. It's good company. We get a lot of work done.
Yeah, it's very satisfying.
It's very satisfying.
So anyway, but so somebody could indicate right now that's something I want to do, and if not, maybe we could definitely talk about it by our reorg meeting. I'm going to be out of town actually most of the time, but we're not going to meet before July 5th anyway. Actually, we need to talk to Dr. Benante, but I mean, I think that we should keep moving forward. We want to turn this around. It's not a speedy process,
So maybe a goal would be to have the policy committee in place by the reorg meeting and then do some work over the summer.
Yeah, and so just for folks who are new-ish, and Maggie, if you don't remember, typically it's not until our retreat in the summer where we decide who's going to be on which committees. The exception is the audit committee, because that's actually a committee that needs to work throughout the summer. Well, this actually kind of now turns out to be a second committee that, if we're going to get the audits back in the spring, this is also going to be a committee that we need to sort of establish before our retreat. If you don't really know what it involves, or you have any questions and you think you might be interested, I'm happy to talk to anybody. But yeah, it would be great if we could. Maybe the easiest way to do this is if you're interested, you could just reach out to me, and if we don't have a second person by next time, I might
reach out to you.
On that note, I'm going to take from that last sentence that you are willing to continue.
I guess actually, maybe I'm being too presumptuous. I mean, maybe if other people.
The policy committee doesn't work unless Peggy's on it.
Well, that's
it's essential.
If nothing
you
else,
all don't know this, but when I was going to run a couple of years ago, Bill was still like, "You'll still be on the policy committee."
Right?
I don't know why.
Just from a transfer of knowledge perspective. So you're okay.
I'm happy to continue. If the board is comfortable, I had assumed that it would be okay. If the board's comfortable, I'm more than happy to continue in the role that I've to be on the committee.
Perfect. Right.
I guess that was a little presumptuous, so sorry about
Presume away on that.
Yes, that's a good presumption to make. Okay, good. So Westchester Putnam School Boards Association update. This will be my last Westchester Put update. So just so you guys know, Sarah Tormey, who is she has served as the president of the Garrison School Board and was reelected. So she'll continue her next 3 years at the Garrison School Board. She will now be on the Westchester Putnam Board of Directors. So we have a nice close person in our midst to represent Phillipstown. And if you guys have questions or needs about anything that you think Westchester Put could be of help, she's a great person to reach out to. Okay, unfinished business, going into our board self-evaluation. So this is a process that the board embarks on throughout the year. We did our mid-year evaluation, I think it was February. We did our final self-evaluation recently. John has graciously led this process and is going to talk us through this evening.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. To remind people who are new to this, people who may be watching, who have not seen this before, the Board of Ed goes through a self-evaluation process, much like the evaluation process actually we do for the superintendent. 5 standards upon which we assess ourselves, and then for us, 5 practices against each standard. For a mid-year, we look for sort of glows and grows, not going to every level of detail. For the end of year, and, one more thing, we look at the goals that we have set for the Board of Ed and assess ourselves on our performance on that. For the end of the year, we actually go into detail and we look across each of the practices, across each of the standards, as well as providing commentary on where we think we've done well and where we think there may be an opportunity for us to improve. Great. Much like report cards, we're talking about the same sort of thing, except in this case, we're self-assessing. I shared out the results with the entire board. I will send them to you. I apologize. I will also send them to you, Dr. Benante, so you can see them. I was going to do a sort of a summary from my perspective, but I decided not, because I feel like I'm in the position of the person who holds the pen kind of dictates the outcome of the conversation, and I don't want to do that. I will, however, share at least, I think, a high-level assessment from my perspective, which is I asked the board to consider, of the 5 standards upon which we assess ourselves, which might be the 2 where we feel like there is the most work to be done or the most opportunity for us to have a conversation. And I think it's fairly, I hope people would agree with me, and if not, that's fine, consistent that there are 2 that sort of raise to the top in terms of opportunity and conversation, as well as 1 goal. So I'll go with the things where I think we have a consistent perspective first, which is our governance and policy, our fiscal resources, recruitment and environment, and finally our ethical leadership. I felt like the board was fairly consistent, both in terms of how we scored ourselves, even not necessarily scoring ourselves exceeding, but we were consistent in how we thought about ourselves, so there's not a lot of differentiation. I thought the 2 areas where there was more diverse opinions, as well as opportunities for improvement, were 3, which is our communication, which has consistently been I wouldn't say a struggle, but something that we continue to try to work on, both in terms of how and the perceptions of the community, how we feel like we should be communicating with and engaging in the community as a board, separate from as a district. So that's a good area for conversation. And I think the second one was actually standard 1 on vision, leadership, and accountability. Just from how do we, there were a number of pieces in there that were actually communication based. How do we establish our goals? How do we communicate them out to the community? And how do we actually work on what are our expectations for the district and come to those conclusions? So that would be my initial sort of statement about where I think the 2 standards I think that the board raised as places for opportunity. The next steps after conversation here would be during the course of our summer retreat to pick out some very key areas where we can think we can do things differently, where we need to do a better job of messaging or managing, especially in a communication perspective, and then come up with some ideas and tactics on which to work on those. So I'll throw that out. Any comment from the board, from any members of the board? Oh, I would be remiss if I didn't point out the one thing that Jen reminded me to remind us and remind myself on, is that she continues to, she's not done yet, is that we have consistently said that doing new member orientation was an important part, and that actually came through in comments, I think, from some new members, and there was a lot of commentary about what can we do to help Ezra. I don't think that's any implication on the fact that you need more or less help, but
I need all the help.
there are, what can we put as ongoing processes? And I know that has been something that I've tried to work on and have been abysmally unsuccessful in driving forward. But that came through as both in a goal and the commentary in some of our standards as well. So I think that's something we need to think about over the course of the retreat.
And one of the things I mentioned in my evaluation was we all as a group, I think, consistently feel that it's an important thing to do and that it's something we don't really do that well. And we've put it as a goal for a couple of years because we all recognize that, but we haven't really made too much movement on the goal. And so one of the suggestions I made was, contracting with Westchester Putt or NISBA to bring in a consultant. If the board wants to make it a focus, I personally think it's worth it, to bring in a consultant to help guide the process, and just to have a little accountability. When they give us a process and they talk through what might work for us, and then there's somebody to be accountable to, and you can implement it and try it out and see what works and what doesn't work. And, there are people who do this for a living. We don't need to, make it up ourselves.
That makes so much sense to me. I mean, I feel the more I go on in life, I think I'm gonna do this, and I sort of start from the ground up when there have to be models out there. There really have to be.
There definitely are, and I
so
know
I think that makes
Westchester Putt and NISBA do them.
I think that makes so much sense because I even think we've tried different things about sort of having someone sort of serve as a buddy or someone to work directly with a new member, and we've tried it different ways, and I mean, clearly it's not as successful as we want it to be, and so it's so important. I think that's a really great idea. Actually, the only other thing right now, because I'll be honest, haven't had a chance to process what we have in front of us, and I'm a slow reader, But, the way we've done this in the past, and I want to remind us to possibly do this next year, is we come an hour early, and we open the meeting. And it's open because it needs to be part of our open meeting process, but we're not trying to fit it in at the end of the meeting. So one thing I like us all to try and remember next year is when we do this, let's plan to do it in such a way so that we can actually really engage in a conversation. But I think it's probably harder to engage in a conversation when we've been here for a couple of hours and haven't necessarily had the time that we might have liked to have processed things. So that's just one thing to note for next year. I mean, I still feel like there's things here for us to grapple with, right? So I feel like the new member orientation that's pretty clear, what that needs to be and what our next steps might be for that. But I feel like when it comes to the communication and community relations, I think there's understandably some confusion, at least on my part, about exactly what is our role for doing this. And I think it's one of the things I wrote in my comments. It's what are we, really what is appropriate for us to be doing around that? And then I think also in terms of setting the vision, or I think another thing that came up is in my brief review of what we have is sort of what is the board's role? I mean, clearly we have a role, but what is our role in sort of establishing goals for the district and helping to establish a vision for the district? And what's our role, an appropriate role? What would be the process for doing that? And then what would be a process for communicating about that? And that actually could also be something where it would be really useful to bring in someone who has expertise in terms of that, because yeah, I think too it gets a little bit hard to distinguish between what is the district's communication strategy and what is the board's communication strategy and responsibilities, and that there are some overlaps, but they're not all overlaps. And I do, I think that would be really helpful, because it's clear in reading the comments that there's definitely things that we more or less collectively think that we could be doing better. And so I just want to figure out, I'm not sure, it's another area where I feel like having some guidance and somebody who's seen a process for doing that could be really helpful. Yeah.
And I agree, and I just wanted to go back to the new member training aspect. Everyone's always available and making themselves available, the other board, which is wonderful, but it's sort of hard sometimes to reach out and knowing exactly, which things we should be asking about. But the one, probably one of the most useful things, because we go through this training with NISBA, is it NISBA? Mm-hmm. That we go through the two modules, which is really great, it's really standard, but was sitting down with Catherine Platt and Anne before she left, and we did like a 101. And Anne had sort of designed it, but we took like the next meeting, the budget, going through and just every little thing, like what the letters mean. And, if there was other avenues or other pieces of what our role is, right? And sort of sitting down with the department heads or whatever, just in that sort of 101 setting. I mean, that was just,
I remember doing the same
really.
thing. It was fantastic. I was like, how's this budget? I don't understand.
Yeah, but I didn't know I had it.
it.
Yeah, and that just recently happened. That was right, just like a couple months ago. So if it would have been better if it happened earlier on. But, and I didn't know to ask for that, right?
Formalize it as a step in the process. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, and something I've been thinking is that, to this point, we've always said, when the new board member or any board member has questions, ask them.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes you don't know what questions to ask. You don't know how to anticipate. You don't know what you don't know sometimes. And so having something a little bit more formalized to even prompt the questions could be helpful. So next steps with this evaluation would be for the board to kind of deep dive into it a little bit more at retreat, maybe craft some goals around the things that were brought up.
Yep.
And we typically craft the goals at our retreat in alignment with the district goals. And maybe between now and then, there'd be some more time to look at the material. I know we all just got it, so to look at it a little bit more thoughtfully and come up with some ideas. Yeah?
I mean, the reorg meeting is typically kind of short. Oh, no, but Maggie's getting, I was actually thinking of the reorg meeting, like not waiting until the retreat, because honestly, our conversation about it is, it's not retreat material, it's open meeting material.
Yeah.
But I don't want to do it at the reorg meeting because Maggie already has something to do the next day, so I really do think it's something that we want to talk about in public. I mean, and typically our business meeting in August is often kind of short. And so if folks are around, like maybe, we could set it up for something like, it's at the since that meeting's typically really short, we could do it at the end, we could come an hour early. But I do think it would be good for us to have a meaningful conversation to sort of grapple with some of these things and then, decide what we want to do next.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And I always would love to hear, I don't know about that verb, but, when it comes to communication and community relations, we have to drill down and decide sort of how we're going to tackle that in what areas. But, if there's anyone in the community has anything, to say about how we communicate or how they wish we could communicate, because I know a lot of that, some of the questions that I had sort of stems from hearing how the community thinks we communicate or how they would like us to communicate, that would be really useful if anyone, any type of feedback, just that we could funnel their thoughts into sort of how we craft what we do going forward.
Yeah. Okay, good. I think we have a plan. Yes?
So with that, at the August.
At the August meeting, and then
business meeting.
but I think you're hoping that the timing is that is pre-retreat.
I don't know. Either way, even if
Either
it's
way.
not, but that's the thing. It actually doesn't have to be at the retreat. We're supposed to talk about our goals in a public meeting. We don't, unless we think there's something that we want to study or go into in the retreat, that's more of like a professional development activity, but the rest of it needs to happen in an open meeting. And so I think,
One of the, it'd be interesting if there were an opportunity to bring in somebody like when we did the retreat, I think when you first came on, I forget what his name was from BOCES, one of the things, was talking about was basically superintendent board interaction strategies. And some of that is, there are some parallels to this, right? In terms of communication, in terms of vision setting, in terms of like roles and responsibilities, kind of some of the questions that you had. So if there were an opportunity to bring somebody in for the retreat that was based on the things that we want to focus on, is there a calendarization?
Have we shared the document with Phil?
I have not, no.
I think that's something that we really want to do, because I also think that Phil could probably take he's a pretty smart cookie. Take a look at that and maybe even have some ideas. I mean, we've often looked to Phil for recommendations about what we should do for the retreat. Not that we have to do that. I'm sorry, because you're here and I'm facing the rest of the board, but I'll do that. I think that's one thing that we definitely want to do.
Okay,
but I don't know.
Yeah. So it sounds like, we'll share the documents with Phil, with Ezra. Everyone will have a little bit more time to look at it between now and the reorg meeting, and then perhaps at the reorg meeting, you can codify some next steps, some timing of a retreat, or the August meeting, or like how you want to lay it out. Does that sound good?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, John, for your work.
Thank you.
We're going into the bond resolution, and I will turn it to Ms. Platt.
We're actually starting with CSE,
Oh, I'm sorry, I missed that. The CSE, CPSE recommendations, sorry.
Be it resolved that, upon the recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools, the Board of Education hereby approves the recommendations of the Committees on Special Education and Preschool Special Education as presented.
May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, item number 2, the bond resolution.
Yes, and this is a roll call vote.
Thank you.
Be it resolved that, upon the recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools, the Board of Education hereby approves the resolution authorizing the purchase of student transportation vehicles for the Haldane Central School District at Phillipstown, Dutchess, and Putnam Counties, New York, at an aggregate maximum estimated cost of $185,000, and authorizing the issuance of a $185,000 serial bonds of said school district to pay the costs thereof.
May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay.
President Daly?
Yes.
Vice President McNall?
Yes.
Trustee Clements?
Yes.
Trustee Headland?
Yes.
And Trustee Valentine?
Yes.
Okay.
Going into the resolution to authorize payment for the liability reserve fund.
Be it resolved that, upon the recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools, the Board of Education approves the following resolution. Resolved that the Board of Education authorizes the expenditure of a sum not to exceed $52,000 from the Liability Reserve Fund for the release and settlement agreement involving student number 40324.
May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Any communication from the public? Any board reflections?
Yeah. I had a really long weekend because of travel issues. And my entire family had a really long weekend. And I got to Monday, and I was like, oh my gosh, thank goodness we don't have to do anything on Monday. And I came down, I think it was like 1 o'clock, and I see my daughter, and she's sitting at the dining room table. I'm like, why are you on a computer screen? It's beautiful outside. Go do something. She's like, I'm on a Zoom call. I'm like, okay, about what? About geometry. I'm like, oh my gosh. So Monday, day off, one of the high school teachers was doing a Zoom to prep her students for a geometry regents. The crazy thing is my daughter was participating, but I like that. It's that level of dedication, I think, that I'm just constantly amazed by. So thank you. Hopefully it went well for everybody concerned today. We'll find out, but it was great.
Nice. Thank you. Dr. Benante, anything you'd like to share? Oh, I'm sorry.
I just didn't take a chance to say something about Jen when we were doing that, so I'm going to say something now. I really appreciated hearing what Jen had to say tonight, but I did also want to thank her for her leadership, like, continually. Like, I'm always amazed at how Jen really thinks so carefully about what might really matter to the community. I think she's really helped the board function as well as we have functioned. And I really appreciate, all the support that I've gotten from her. So, yeah, it feels like a really big shift, but it's kind of, yes. So thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Benante.
I have nothing to add, Jen.
I would like to make a motion to adjourn then. May I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
Peace out.
Peace out.